those that may be newer to the channel, you might not know about my fascination with some of the numbers within Call of Duty. That being some things from, say, just weapon data and the hard-coded statistics, all the way up to things like the supply drop rates in the past couple of years. Now, that's stuff that we talked about previously within the channel, and it's content that we've all put out to try and see if we can decipher or discern a pattern out of the everyday things we come across within Call of Duty. And that goes for all titles, say Black Ops 3, Modern Warfare, Mastered, Infinite Warfare. We've touched on all of those in the recent years and talked about various different things like supply drop like we mentioned, how much it might take to end up getting a certain skin in Modern Warfare Mastered, all things like that. So while we haven't really approached any videos in the terms of pure statistical data and trying to see the patterns and the odds of things, and whenever just looking at and playing Call of Duty World War II recently, I ended up noticing that I had a lot of supply drops still saved up. I was planning on saving them up for a certain amount of time and then opening them all up at once, but it really didn't hit me how many I had. I think at the current point in time I have about 125 saved up between rare and common supply drops. I'm more gonna maybe try and get that up to 150, 200, I don't know, but regardless, I still have a ton of these set aside, and while thinking about that, I thought, well, what are the odds that I end up getting everything that I'm hoping for here within World War II? What are the odds that we end up pulling some really cool stuff, some weapons, some character customization? What are the odds out of those? So I decided to do some digging and see if there was anything testing-wise that we could cross-reference and maybe get a little bit of our hopes up for some things in my case on opening these up, or if you guys have any situation in which you want to open up supply drops, what are your odds of actually getting something out of a rare supply drop? So we're gonna be taking a look at a few different data sets, a couple of 100 supply drops each, a couple of over 100 supply drops, some right at, and one that is about the 50% mark, right? That 55 compared to the others, but still it creates a nice little data pool in which we can take a look at the higher numbers. That's the entire portion of this, why we want to do it, to make our data set and sample size much bigger, because the bigger the sample size is when taking these specific numbers and applying them, the more accurate they become. That's something that just makes sense in general, even if you don't follow necessarily the statistics of things. The moral and the basis of all of it is the more people you end up asking, or the more, say, information on one specific area you have, the more accurate it becomes. So by collecting these sorts of multiple individual sets of data, we can end up making a larger pool of our data set, and therefore hopefully get a more accurate representation of the supply drop numbers as a whole. So that said, let's jump into our first data set here with this one, that being a supply drop test of 100 drops. This first set included 134 commons, 94 rares, 38 legendaries, 28 epics, and 6 heroics, with 12 weapon variants thrown in there, both of the epic and heroic category. Now, weapons are the only thing we're gonna be detailing, I think, in a little more detail compared to the sorts of items they are, not just necessarily the classifications. But of course, if you guys wanna see something else, I can totally throw that in here if we end up doing a follow-up in terms of with my results as well, throwing about 100 to 200 more supply drops in this pool of data. But nonetheless, that brings our first data set to a 45% drop rate of commons, a 31% drop rate of rares, a 13% drop rate of legendaries, a 9% drop rate of epics, and a 2% drop rate of heroics, with a drop rate of about 4% for weapon variants. Now that said, moving along into the second data set pool, this is another 100 supply drop test in which we end up getting 132 commons, 95 rares, 36 legendaries, 31 epics, 6 heroics, and 15 weapons. So once again, bringing those totals to 44%, 32, 12, 10%, 2%, and 5% respectively. Now the third set of information that we can end up gathering is a test of 97 supply drops. Not 100, but 97 still. So a decent little collection, but not as much as we saw in the last two. That said, it brings us to 122 common, 101 rares, 30 legendaries, 29 epics, 9 heroics, and 16 weapons. Now, of course, those percentages then rank out to be 41.9% common, 34.7% rare, 10.3% legendary, 10% epic, and 3.1 heroic, with a 5.5% drop rates on weapons. The fourth test is a test of 115 rares, and this then equates out to getting 148 common items, 121 rare items, 33 legendaries, 34 epics, 9 heroics, with 17 weapon variants dispersed evenly in there. That percentage once again comes out then to 42.9% common, 35.1% rare, 9.6% legendary, 9.9% epic, 2.6% heroic, and 4.9% on the weapon drops. Now, the final test that we're going to be taking into consideration here with this, and of course there's many more we could probably throw in here if we end up searching and digging out through a bunch of isolated tests and incidents. I'm sure we could throw in a bunch more here that people have recorded since the time of launch, but this is the last one we'll cover for the sake of this video, and then we'll talk about them as a whole. So this one was a 55 rare supply drop test, in which out of that we ended up getting 58 common, 62 rare, 19 legendary, 21 epics, 5 heroics, and 10 weapon variants, to which the percentage breakdown of that is 35%, 37.5%, 11.5%, 12.7%, and 3%, then with 6% on weapon drops. So that does it for the first 5 overview, and brings us now to our grand total, which initially whenever I take a look at these, some of the things that really stands out to me is that there's a bunch of cases in which you end up getting more epics than legendaries, and sometimes those higher denominations come more so than that of the lower denominations as we'd necessarily expect, which is an interesting thing to me. But that said, out of our 5 little test values here with this and each individualized test, if we put them all together, it's a total of 467 supply drops. Rare supply drops, that is, because we're not taking into account commons with this, though the common results are quite interesting as well. But because we end up having statistically a better chance of things as rare supply drops, we're taking a look at just those. But 467 drops, that brings you up to a total of 594 common items, 473 rare items, 156 legendary items, 143 epic items, 35 heroic items, and 70 total weapons between the epic and heroic categories. Those percentages then break down respectively into 42.3% common, 33.7% rare, 11.1% legendary, 10.2% epic, and 2.5% heroic, with a grand total on the weapons of the epic and heroic classifications of being 4.99% of your overall drops. So if you were to open up, say, 467 supply drops, this is theoretically the base number you would be able to get every single time. And of course, when we end up including that sample size to be bigger, it's only going to become more and more precise as we end up getting more information. So when we actually take this and apply it to individualized statistics of supply drops, of course it will differ. It's not everything that is entirely guaranteed, but it gives us a better representation of the sorts of things that we can see. So if you're looking for a weapon of some sort, either epic or heroic variants in World War II, you're gonna have about a 5% chance of getting those over time, in rare supply drops, that is. And again, as I mentioned, I think it's interesting that overall it doesn't necessarily reflect it as some classification getting more than others, but in a couple of these instances and these isolated testings, you can end up seeing where we had the higher tier actually show up more so than the tier right below it. So while again, it's all completely RNG, it's all complete random number generators and all up to that COD luck, well, it's something that we kind of have a bearing on what we can expect, at least now, with all this said. Now, of course, I'm not done with this. This is going to be something that I progressively will test more and more as time goes on, because I want to throw my supply drops in there, the 150 to 200 supply drops that I ended up getting as well. And then also, as time progresses throughout the year, it's something that we might be able to get a more pinpoint, precise lock on the numbers and the percentages that we end up getting for that air quote RNG machine in the supply drop system. Now, while it is of course all subjective, it's something that I wanted to kind of break away from some of the stuff that we were doing as of recently and change up the content just for this one to give you guys a complete breakdown, statistical analysis, and something that I think maybe you can find pretty useful at any point in time. Now, of course, you guys may be completely against supply drops, and that's totally cool. I absolutely hate the system in terms of buying them. As for earning them, well, I have no problem with it, especially if it's cosmetic items only, but I guess we'll see how long that lasts in the future. But that said, I think that's where we're gonna wrap it up here at this one, so hopefully this helped you out in some way, shape, or form. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. Do you guys have any crazy supply drop stories you guys would like to share? Do you guys find these numbers to be rather in line with what a normal standard subset of numbers and the percentages would be, or whatever it may be? Let me know down there in the comment section down below. Of course, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course, if you guys aren't new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe to stay up to date with everything we have here regarding Call of Duty World War II. We're gonna keep you guys up to date with everything you need to know about Call of Duty World War II, any tips, tricks, best class setups, news, leaks, informations, breakdowns, all that good stuff. We got you covered here up on the channel. So if any of it interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. And finally, if you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. I practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. But all that said, now I hope you guys guys on a fantastic day. Thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.